You're watching the West Coast Logging Channel. Come on inside and get some logs, that is.
So what do you guys say we do as story time, huh? Came out? We probably better do a couple of three of those and have them ready until we figure out what we're gonna get to do with the channel and whatnot. Before that, I wanted to let everybody know that I did go ahead and design some t-shirts, hoodies, and long sleeve tees on that Teespring. I will leave a link in the description to this video. Actually, there'll be 3 links because I couldn't figure out how to get them all in one place. So I hope you all enjoy. And that's the best way I could get the shirts and whatnot done for right now. So anyways, it's on to story time, huh? Worry about that stuff later. So this one, I was working for a guy. I'd worked for him a couple of 3 times, and he was known really good for, he'd buy brand new equipment, have all this fancy new stuff, and then things would start disappearing after about a year or so, and then he'd belly up, and then he'd show back. Anyway, so things were starting to disappear, and I knew it was time for me to start looking for a job. And I went with him. We went and looked at this shovel logging job, and it was a Christmas tree farm that had been let go. And I mean, it was pretty nice stuff, but it had knots on it like that big around, about breast height, all the way to the top of the tree. And he says, we're gonna make you into a chaser, Al. And I was like, no, you're not. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with that unit at all. Anyways, I did my normal thing. I started calling people up. I called my brother. He said, actually, the place I'm working had 3 yarder sides and a tong tosser. He said, I think one of the swing yarders, little diamond swing yarders, hook tenders leaving. I'll let you know. So he calls me back a few minutes later and he says, yeah, actually this is his last week. I gave the boss your number. He's going to call you. So it wasn't but just a few minutes later the guy calls me, and I knew who the guy was. He was a very respected logger around here, but I'd never met him or anything. And so he calls and we're talking. He's asking me about my experience and all that, and so I'm telling him, and he says, well, I'll tell you, Alex, to be honest, he said, what I'm looking for is I need somebody that's not afraid to be an asshole. And he said, I don't mean just somebody going there and scream and yell and all that, but somebody's not afraid to be the boss. And he said, your brother says you don't have any problem being a boss, which I didn't, still don't. He says, the deal of it is this yarder works the least amount of hours, gets the least amount of loads, and they never make bonus, anything like that. And he said the biggest problem is they're all friends. And nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. So he said, I'm not going to do that again. So I ended up taking the job, and he said, after I take the job, he says, well, it is a little bit of a drive. And he said, normally I'd put the guys up in a motel, but we can't start till after 8:30 in the morning because of this bird. And I was like, oh man, 8:30, and it's middle of summer. I'm like, oof, forgot about that. And he says, I want to get this job done. We've been down there 3 different times now because we can only log it certain months out of the year. And he said, if we get together, and he said, it can be done this year without, having to kill ourselves. And he said, I don't want to go back down there. So I want at least 5 10-hour days put in down there. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, you're telling me I can have an open time book? And he said, if you can stay productive, you can work 7 10s. And I'm like, hallelujah. So they had a side rod, and then they had another guy that whenever that would just go wherever they needed help. And then whenever they'd hire somebody, a hook tender or a yarder engineer or something like that, this Steve guy would go with them and spend the first couple of 3 days just to make sure that, they had the experience they said they had and all that, and wasn't doing stupid things or wasn't going to crash the yard or whatever. So we start down there, And anyway, so I do all the paperwork and everything, and he says, we'll meet the crummy at 5:30 Monday morning. I'm like, 5:30? We're starting at 8:30. I go, well, how long is the drive? And he goes, it's every bit of 3 hours. I'm like, oh my God. Sure enough, I mean, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes, and that's rolling coal. We was going clear up to Salem and across Salem. I mean, it was every bit of 3 hours one way. All right, so I'm talking to these guys up there, and you can tell that they're pretty lackadaisical and whatnot. And on the way up there, they tell me that the hook tender on Friday, they changed roads, and he just went up and hung out on a landing. And didn't rig any trees, didn't make a layout, nothing. And they had like 2 hours of logging left. And I'm like, oh, great. So we get there, I grab section of haywire and I head down off the hill and get to the jack tree, and I start rigging the jack tree. Well, I tell the chaser, while I'm rigging the jack tree, I want you to pull off how many ever sections, I forget what it was, so that I can finish this layout. The chaser says, well, Johnny used to do that, the old hook tender. Well, Johnny's not here anymore. I said, I got limited time, so I said, you get them sections pulled off, you'll have time. So up the tree I go, get it rigged, come down, hang the guy lines. Okay, jack tree's ready, grab the haywire, head down to the lift tree, get the rigging sent out for the lift tree, run up it real quick. Now mind you, I'm only going up these trees about 40 feet, so it's not, you know, you can have a tree done pretty quick. Maybe 60 feet at the max. They're pretty clean trees. Oh, I throw a block in it, get my guy lines, come down, and was getting ready to pull the guy lines out, and the guys on the rig had said, well, hey, we only got 3 or 4 turns left. So I was like, okay, I got to finish the layout because I can always get the guy lines out later. So I grab the haywire, find my tail hole, over to the last one. I'm ready. They're shipping their last turn. I'm like, I'm ready. So this guy, the company helper guy, he's like, that was a good idea. It was a really good idea. So he says, I'll go get the guy lines picked up while they're spinning the skyline around. Okay, because, you know, and I figured we could do that and wouldn't have to stop anything. So as it turns out, I'm ready. Everything gets done, and it was a wagon wheel landing where the yarder was just going to set, and you know, we didn't have to move any guy lines or anything. So the guy was like, I'm pretty impressed with that. So I go out, make my next layout and everything's all good. About halfway through the day, somebody says something, and I go, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, we're going to start working some more hours down here. And it was a dead silence. Well, instead of just going right straight to 10 hours, and I knew it would just absolutely kill them, we worked the first 2 days, we worked 9 hours, and then we started working 10s. Well, at the end of the week, I don't remember what it was, but I had to go was going to have to pick something at the shop up, and there was no way we were going to make it in time. So I called the shop, and the boss's, or the owner's wife, worked the office, and she says, hey, yeah, I wanted to talk to you anyways. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. She goes, are you working 10 hours a day down there? And I went, I go, yeah, absolutely, we are. And you're driving? And I go, yeah, why? Is there something? I go, is there a problem with that? She goes, no, I just didn't, you know, that's quite a bit. And I go, well, Pete's the one that said that he wanted 10 hours a day now. Oh, yeah, no problem. Hung up the phone. Well, right there immediately, I knew somebody had been calling the office. So, back it up a little bit. The first day on the way home, that my brother had told these guys, don't buy beer, because Alex won't let you drink beer in a crummy. And so as they're all getting out of the crummy to go in the store, I said, don't bring any beer in this crummy because you're not drinking. What? It's a 3-hour drive. I'm like, I don't care. So you can buy one, you can stand right outside there and pound it down if you want. But I go, you're not drinking it in my crummy. I'm not taking a chance of losing my job so you guys can drink beer. So we get to work the next week, and I can tell there's animosity. These guys, they don't like me because I'm making them do their jobs. And so Monday night, we stop at the store, and I jump out and go inside, and I bought a 6-pack of beer and a small package of toilet paper. And everybody's looking at me funny. Well, right outside the store was like a little park thing, and I said, you guys come over here. So they come over there, and I said, you know, we need to clear some things up right now. If there's a problem amongst the crew, we need to figure it out amongst the crew, and then we can drink these. If we can't figure it out amongst the crew, then you can use this to wipe your tears with while you're looking for another job. Oh, no, it's fine. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we're working along there, and it's a Wednesday, and we finish the road right at quitting time. And I go ahead and get that yarder moved down to the next landing. I wasn't going to hang the guy lines or anything. I just wanted it moved down there. And the yarder engineer starts bitching. And I said, we still got to walk up out of the hole here anyways. I said, just travel that stupid ass yarder down there and put it in its setting. If you don't like that, then I'll find somebody that will. So he travels the yarder down, parks it, whatnot. Next morning we get to work. The side rod's pulling in behind us. And he says, gets on the radio and he says, before you guys take off over the hill, I want to have a meeting with the side. Okay. And I knew right then something was up. So he comes down there and he says, well, he said, if it's not me, it's the owner or the office is getting a phone call just about every night about you. I mean, he's talking about me. And he says, so I'm down here today to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, you know, I told these guys if there was a problem, they could come to me and talk right straight to me, and they all clam up. So the side rod, he takes this piece of paper out and he says, I want you guys to look at this hour sheet, production sheet, and all this. And he says, you guys have not worked a 40-hour week the whole, however long this guy was tending hook. And you'd never gotten over X amount of loads. And he said, he's been here almost 2 weeks now, and you've already got a 40-hour week, and you've upped your load count by 2.5 loads a day. So he's doing something right. And he goes, basically what I'm hearing here, because he's asking these guys, okay, what's your problem? And the chaser says, well, he has me pull haywire off. Or he'll send his guy lines in, he has me coil them up and then send them back out later, 2 or 3 roads later. And the side rod goes, well, sounds like he's just making you do your job. And so the side rod says, this, that, and the other. And we talked for a good half hour or so, and he says, well, sounds to me I think we've got it figured out. That you guys just are not used to having to do your job. Oh, yeah, no problem. Well, I knew right then that we hadn't solved anything because nobody had stood up and said, oh, he's a prick or I hate that son of a bitch. They cowered back. So, a few days, a week or so goes by pretty smooth. They still didn't like the idea of working 10 hours a day, and they didn't like the drive, and, all this, that, and the other. And payday comes. And I heard him bitching about, there's no way we're going to make it in time to cash our check. So I thought, you know what? I'll be nice. I didn't need to worry about it. My check was already in the bank. But I was like, we'll quit at 8 hours. Just, we'll make some, for the crew. They are here working, So we get right close to 8 hours, and I said, what do you guys think about just working 8 hours a day and get your checks cashed? Oh, good Lord. I mean, every one of them wanted to take me out to dinner. So we go in, cash the checks and everything. Everybody's all happy. Next morning, meet the crummy. Now, when you're driving 3 hours and somebody's late, you don't wait very long for them. And I had a rule. 5 minutes for everybody, 6 minutes for nobody. Because I would not make myself late for anybody, especially driving that far. Well, the yarder engineer wasn't there. Everybody else was there. I said, let's go. And they're all kind of looking at me. Well, we start out the highway, and we had cell phones at this time with phone rings. My pickup's out of gas. So where are you at? Well, he was just right there on the highway. He was coming towards us. I said, okay, well, I'll just pull over and pick you up. So I pull up there. He crosses the highway, jumps in the pickup. When I start down the road, well, I hit the exit to head up I-5, and he goes, where are you going? To work. No. You got to go to the fuel stop and get me fuel so I can get my pickup. And I go, first of all, why the hell would I go to the fuel stop? And second, why can't we get it on the way home? We're late already. And you got to stop, because we got to go get my pickup. So I just pull over. And I go, what happened to, I go, it's the day after payday. What happened to cashing your check yesterday, you know, well, I stopped by a buddy's house, started drinking beer, and next thing I know, the bank was closed. And I'm like, oh, really? And he goes, are you going to go back and get gas or not? And I said, no, I'm going to work. If you want to get your pickup, get out and go get your pickup. Otherwise, we can get it on the way home. So he gets out, take off down the road. Well, the order engineer was the side rod's best friend. And I don't get up the highway a half hour, and my phone rings, and it's my brother. And he goes, what the hell's going on? And I'm like, what do you mean, what the hell's going on? He goes, I heard you just fired the whole crew. And I'm like, no, I didn't fire the whole crew. I didn't fire anybody. I just, you know, and I explained it to him, and he says, you screwed up, dude. You screwed up. That's the side rod's boy. He, you know, you don't do that stuff to him. And I'm like, well, I do. So on up the highway we went. Well, I called the wife, and I told her, I said, you better make sure that car's got plenty of gas in it this morning. She's like, why? What'd you do now? And I'm like, nah, just make sure, just in case. I go, this one may backfire on me. So we get up to the job, and one of the guy gets out, and he goes, well, what are we going to do without a yarder engineer? And I go, I'll run yarder. It's a yarder. I'll run a yarder. Oh, okay. So, well, we were sitting on a road bank anyways, and the shovel was having to grab every turn. So the first turn comes in, I start bringing it in, I blow the whistle to slack the skyline, I swing this thing over and lay the turn right down the road, and everybody's just like, what? I didn't know it was a swing yard. One of them actually said, oh, I didn't know you could swing while you're logging. And I'm like, are you serious? So we go along there, and I see the owner's pickup come up the road, and he pulls right up to the tracks of the shovel, gets out, walks up, and he talks to the shovel operator for a couple minutes, then he climbs in the back of the cab of the yarder with me, he shuts the door, and I'm right in the middle of bringing a turn in, so I don't expect him to say anything. Land the turn, pick it up, ship it back, and I do this for 4 or 5 turns. He doesn't say a word. By now, I'm just sweating like crazy. And he goes, puts his hand down on my shoulder like that, and he goes, well, Alex, he goes, one thing you need to learn about me, he says, if I tell my hook tenders to do something and they do it, I stand behind them 100%. And he says, if there's any of these other guys out here you want to go home this afternoon, you tell them to get their shit and get my pickup, I'll take them with me right now. And I'm like, yes! So he gets out, shuts the door, and away he goes. Everybody, they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe that he got rid of this guy. And I mean, this guy, he was a horrible yarder engineer. Well, as he's getting out, he says, it'll take me a little bit, but I'll find you a yarder engineer. And I go, instead of finding me a yarder engineer, find me a chaser. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, well, a couple of the other days that guy's missed, oh, so-and-so here, he's been up in the yarder, and, you know, I've been training him, and I said, he does a pretty good job. And he goes, you think he wants the job? And I go, well, we'll ask him. So I said, hey, you want to run this yarder and we'll find a chaser? And he starts taking his pants or his cutting chaps off. I goes, that answer? Okay. So he actually turned out to be a damn good yarder engineer. Turned out to be a really damn good yarder engineer. So things are going along there pretty good. And my brother's side got shut down. And so what they would do was they would take my, like, because we had 2 rigging slingers and a choker setter and what they call a pimp. And the pimp would either help the chaser when it was really busy, or be out on the rigging, or go help me make layouts and stuff. Well, I never used the pimp. When if I have a whole day or a day and a half, 2 days to make a layout, even if I'm rigging trees, I never, unless, you know, when I got up the tree, I would have him come over and tie my rigging on. That was it. So what they would do is they would take my pimp and choker setter and lay them off, and they would take the hook tender and the rigging slinger or whatever. So anyway, so my brother and his 2 rigging slingers come over to my side, and my 3 guys got laid off. So I called the boss and I said, hey, listen, I'll just go back to pulling rigging until Dale goes back on his side. And he's like, nope. That's your side. You're the hook tender. And I'm like, listen, my brother's a good logger, but we don't work like this. I know how my brother works, and if he's not in control, he steps on toes. So I said, you're better off Just I'll go back to pulling rigging, Dale contend hook. Nope, that's not how it's gonna go. So immediately I see it coming. Well, his rigging slinger is the worst rigging slinger I've ever seen in my life. And just a great big old pit bull-headed son of a bitch, and he'd punch you in the mouth for nothing. So, this guy's horrible. He's just the roughest rigging slinger. He's scarring up trees, and he's breaking stuff, and I keep telling him, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, we get into this stuff, and it's 120-year-old trees. It's like this, thinning, with a 210 diamond. And he puts 4 40-foot butts on this, and goes up over a intermediate support, and he breaks the jack line. Thank God it was just the jack line. Well, I'm pissed off. So I bring the line down there, and he's like, oh, it's rotten line. No. Well, you couldn't argue with the guy because, like I say, he'd just punch you in the mouth. So I put another one in it. Well, I'll be a son of a bitch. He picks the same turn up and breaks that one too. And so I go, this is absolutely ridiculous, Dale. I go, you tell him he does it again, I'm going to fire him. And so I put a brand new jack line in it. And I tell the shovel operator, I said, you take them 4 logs and you set them off to the side. When the side rod gets up here, you tell him. That's why we have to go buy new jack lines, because of stuff like that. So we go by a couple of days and everything's going fine. Well, this guy does it again. And this time he breaks my skyline. And everything didn't hurt anything, but I was done. I'm like, I'm not going to work with this guy anymore. So I grabbed my climbing rigging, because one of the sets of climbing rigging was my own personal. And was right off the edge of the landing. I grab it, I hit the landing, I go up behind the yarder and grab my lunch pail, and I start to head out. The shovel operator was a very respected guy too. And he was an a-hole. And he really never said much to me or anything, and I wasn't even sure the guy ever liked me. Well, he climbed down out of the shovel and he says, where the hell do you think you're going? And I'm like, forget it, I'm done. I ain't working with that stupid SOB. He's the worst rigging slinger I've ever seen in my life. He said, he just breaks stuff. And he goes, well, can him. I go, you can't can him. He just punch you in the mouth. And he reaches over and he grabs his branding hammer. And he goes, I've wanted to knock that son of a bitch out my whole life. And he goes, I'll tell you what, kid. He goes, that first day you showed up here, he says, I went to give you 2 pieces of monkey piss, put a fire out. He says, you're a damn good hand. He says, I'll take care of this one. And this guy, he just had double hip surgery. And I'm like, don't worry about it. The guy isn't worth the time or anything. Well, about that time, the guy comes around the corner and the old shovel operator lays into him. Well, this guy bows up like he's going to hit him. And I'm like, you ain't going to hit this old man. We end up into a hell of a tussle about it. Well, for whatever reason, the side rod and the owner come up the road just at that time too. Well, this guy had worked there like 15 years. And I knew there was no way. So they get us all calmed down, and they're like, what the hell's going on? So I'm telling them, and the rigging slinger, he's, saying, oh, his rotten line, he didn't rig his tree right, this, that, and the other. And finally, the shovel, like I say, the shovel operator, he spins around, looks at the owner, and he's like, you've known this guy's worthless since the day he started here. And he does this all the time, and the only reason you keep him is because he's here every day. And he says, I'm telling you right now, if you keep that guy, me and Alex are going to quit. So they fire him right there. That was kind of vindication for everything I'd done, and it did make me feel pretty good that the old shovel operator picked me over this guy. And this guy ended up blowing a gasket and just freaking out. But so we end up finishing that job, and they move us even farther away, and so I ended up quitting. But it was a good job, and I really enjoyed working for that guy. He was a really great guy to work for. I wish that they wouldn't have moved away farther, because it probably would have been a job I would have stuck at for a long time. But so basically, what I'm saying is, sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're even better than right. Come on. Stay safe, boys. Get logs. Come on.